As far as I'm concerned, as long as that same respect and recognition is not shown toward every one of our people in this country, it doesn't exist for me. And during the few moments that we have left, we want to have just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me. Us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
You already know, if I bring back a guest, it means that the feedback was amazing and the episode was really, really dope. Now we have again Dr. Layla joining us, who is now become a friend of the show, and I'm sure she will be on much more in the future. She's actually become my friend over the last few months, and I've taken her as like a mentor. So if any wild shit I say in the future, you can now ascribe it to the doings. You can now ascribe it to the doings and machinations of my new mentor. How are you, Dr. Layla? How are you?
I'm good, but I don't even know how I feel about the fact that you just. I'm responsible for all the craziness now.
Basically,
that is absurd.
Well, you know, I'm sure worse things have happened.
I mean, you are a whole entire person with agency, but it's me.
I think Afro-pessimism would say otherwise.
Oh Lord. Well, that's why
we don't have agency, you see. We have the ontological status of being as a slave. No, we won't go there. No. Welcome back. Thanks for coming back onto the Malcolm Effect. You already know you're a family, you're a friend of the show now.
Thank you for having me.
Good. People really enjoyed your episode and you inspired so many people with Pan-African socialism. So we're going to go straight into it. We're going to say, when I asked you, like you said you're a Pan-African feminist and then you quoted the definition of Pan-Africanism, I believe given by Kwame Nkrumah, please feel free to correct me. That is the total unification, political unification under scientific socialism.
The total
My question is
liberation,
sorry.
Of Africa under scientific socialism.
Thank you. So my question is, why so specific? Because then we see now there's so many different brands of quote-unquote Pan-Africanism. There's what we call the cultural Pan-Africanism, and those people are actually anti-socialist, or they're actually pro-capitalist, but they still call themselves Pan-Africanist. So why are you specific in that definition?
Well, I mean, for me, Pan-Africanism isn't an ideology. It's an objective. So the way that Kwame Nkrumah and Sékou Toure and Kwame Toure talk about Pan-Africanism is that, it's not this sort of, it's not necessarily a way of thinking or being in the world. It's not changing our names, as important as that is, right? It's not changing our names as, diasporic people to continental African names. It's not clothing. It's not language.
It's not kente cloth.
Yes, it's not wearing kente cloth. As important as kente cloth is,
yes,
it's not wearing kente cloth, but it is a political objective. And so that's why I think even for me early in grad school, one of the things that I was really interested in doing was making clear that as a project, I was not interested in diaspora studies. Right? And when I say that, I mean as an intellectual project. It's very clear that the diaspora exists, the African diaspora exists. But I was interested in the political work happening with what I understood to be Pan-Africanism. And so for me, that's not cultural nationalism, right? That's not even things like the New Republic of Africa movement in the US, right? Because for me, that is a particular kind of claim on land in the Americas that, in my understanding, belongs to indigenous peoples of the Americas. And so for me, none of the socioeconomic conditions that we're working towards, which is socialism, is primary, right? And I think that that's not to say that my understanding of Pan-Africanism is void of any understanding of culture, right? Because, you and I had this conversation. Both, Nkrumah and Toure were very in tune to what culture meant for their people, right? I think Sékou Toure has a book, Revolution, Culture, and Society, where he's thinking about that, right? And other people like Amilcar Cabral, and even Thomas Sankara are thinking about culture, and they're thinking about culture in important ways, but it's primarily, again, a political project, right? This is what, Cabral's admonition to return to the source is. It is to our way of being as people. And so that for me is why it's necessary to be specific, because it's not a geographical project, right? It's not pan as in across the continent only. That's a part of it, but it's not only that. And so
Yes.
for me, understanding Pan-Africanism as a political objective makes everything that follows behind it, it has to be in line with that particular political objective, right? And so a kind of politics like an ADOS politics, right, is not
We're
something.
gonna go into all of that. We'll go into it today. I've got my messy cup out today.
Oh,
Yeah. We're gonna pick it all apart today. No, it's very interesting because I mean, you raise a few things, and we spoken like not just on the episode, but we spoken like are you an MLM? Are you a Marxist Leninist? Are you Maoist? Are you what brand of left are you? And something that you said to be a recurring theme is you feel that a lot of the time these people haven't adequately addressed the race, and does seem that way. Do you feel like Pan-Africanism does that then?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that is it's the only real serious brand, I guess, of left politics that really does, and not just race, right? Not race in a general sense, but that takes blackness or Africanness into
Mm,
consideration in a particular kind of way. Because I do think that, like, even as we do kind of solidarity work, one of the complaints that a lot of people have, and I understand it, I see it, I witness it, is that our struggles as Black people, as African people, often get pushed to the side and relegated. I think you and I even had a sidebar conversation about this as it relates to Palestine,
yep,
right?
yep,
And sort of thinking about Black people in the Islamic world, and
yep.
even our sort of global, what do you call it, picture of what Palestine is, right?
Hmm.
And the invisibilization of Palestinians of African descent. And so for me, while I think, Maoism, Leninism, all of Marxism, they all give us something to think about.
Hmm.
They all are important for us to read and engage with. For me, I don't identify as any of those things because I identify as a Pan-Africanist. And like, if I were to say that and I've said this before, the underlying sort of philosophical and ideological commitments that I have would be Nkrumah's Toure's, right?
Hmm.
But fundamentally, I identify as a Pan-Africanist.
Hmm. So the question is then, we're talking about like the objective we're trying to reach. We hear about the role of culture and liberation, or we hear the role of different aspects or different ways we can come to liberation. Some people, quite wrongly believe in the myth of black capitalism called deliver
Mhm.
us liberation. But why do you think it's important that we have such a material take or material analysis, or we're talking about material comes first, or that we understand blackness as it pertains to the means of production, for example?
Mm-hmm. I mean, because ultimately, I'm trying to think about the exact quote that Cabral had says
Mm,
that we're not fighting over ideas.
hmm.
Ultimately, we are fighting to change and improve our material conditions, and that's not to say that ideas don't have a direct relationship to our material condition, but it's not
Hmm.
just a struggle over ideas. And so as we, think about what the nature of our struggles are, we're trying to live more humane lives. And when I say that, I don't even just mean those basic things, right? Because I think oftentimes we talk about the very basic things.
It's interesting you said that because a lot of the time, when people speak of like, sorry to cut you off, when people
Yeah.
speak of like socialism, because the pictures they have is that, oh, do we want everyone to be the same, whatever that means? But you want everyone to have the same shit. Everyone must be the same in society, and I think the conversation's a bit further than that now, isn't it?
It is, but I mean that's disingenuous even
Hmm.
in and of itself, because that was never the goal. The goal, the notion of, what is it? From each according to their ability, to each according to their need,
Hmm.
fundamentally acknowledges that we're not going to all be the same.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
even having that, but also, like I said, it's not even just about, yes, we want to be able to have comfortable and safe places to live. We want to be able to eat. We want to have access to healthcare. We want to have access to education. But those to me are very basic, fundamental
Hmm.
ways of being human. For me, even when I think about Pan-Africanism, as sort of objective and an achievement, it also allows us to flourish creatively. It allows
Mm.
us to think. We in this capitalist world that we live in, we have been made to believe that only competition leads to creativity. And I think that is false. I
Yep.
think that, when people are thinking about what kinds of things do we need or could we use to make our lives easier? And when I say easy, I don't even, it's interesting because it's not even like people often also kind of ascribe a kind of desire for laziness, quote unquote.
Yes.
You think about socialism.
Yeah.
And that's also not it, right? I mean, I do think
Mhm.
that there is a desire to terminate this toxic relationship to exploitative labor, but it is not one that says we just don't do anything, but it's one that acknowledges that leisure time is important. Leisure time is
True.
important because it gives us the freedom and the ability to think. And even under capitalism, they recognize that, right? So, prime example, I have this fellowship that's coming up
Yeah.
to go to Germany, in Germany in the next
Woo!
few months. The entire thank you. The entire premise of the fellowship is we will pay you and we will supplement your income so that you don't have to do the normal things of your job, right, which are teach, which are your administrative
Yeah.
responsibilities, and just give you time to think and read and write and research and be in community with other thinkers. So even
Mm.
under capitalism, we understand the importance of, it's not so much leisure, but we understand the importance of time that is not dedicated to a particular sort of rote activity,
Yes.
or even to directly generating profit, right? Like,
Mhm.
ideas don't necessarily directly generate profit. So even within the current structures that we exist in, we understand the need for time to
100%.
think and be.
100%.
Exactly.
100%. But then, okay, I'm more and more understanding the importance of why we must see race and have a material analysis with it because and then because you do find that obviously naturally people have class interest, and your class interest is dictated by your relationship according to the economic structures in which we find ourselves in today.
Mhm.
I say that as a prelude because when we have this analysis of understanding race and realize majority of black people, especially in the Western hemisphere anyway, are people who are poor or in poverty or just getting by. But then we still live in a racist, white supremacist world. So, for
Mhm.
example, as a young person, then can they be upset, or should they be upset if they have this politic, for example, when let's say the Oscars snub all black creatives? Or is it that anyways, why should I care? They're not, why should I be upset that they're not getting money or
Mhm.
they're not getting accolades, even though we share the same skin color?
Mhm. I think that both responses have validity, right? Because representation does matter. It doesn't exclusively matter. It's not even necessarily the most important thing, but it does matter.
Yeah.
It does matter to be able to see that it's possible to do certain things, right?
Mhm.
And I think whether people decide, fuck the Oscars, who cares? We
Yeah.
don't need their validation, or all of this work. Even what's the newest, scandal right now is Shakari. What's her last
Smoking weed.
name? Yeah,
Richardson. Yeah, I
Richardson
think.
is
Yeah.
smoking weed, right? And being taken, or sorry, being disqualified from
Yeah.
the Olympics. Now, this, I don't know, people are of multiple like opinions about this, right? Like, okay, they athletes know that they're not supposed to be dealing with any kind of illicit substances within this
Yes.
window or period that they are, getting ready to compete.
Hmm.
But at the same time, we're also across the United States. There's already talks of legalizing marijuana at the federal
Exactly.
level,
Exactly.
not just at a state level. And
Mhm.
these are not performance enhancing drugs, right?
Exactly.
If anything, marijuana, marijuana would.
Oh no, I said someone put on Twitter, if she can run that fast on marijuana, she better give her all the gold medals. You better give her all the gold medals, to be honest.
Yes,
You see someone
exactly.
on weed before, they want to sleep and relax and chill.
Exactly. But the double standard, right?
Yeah.
That,
Michael Phelps.
Michael
Michael
Phelps,
Phelps. Exactly.
was partaking in all kinds. And the thing is, it's not even about, I don't even care to have a conversation about the sort of ethics or politics of marijuana. The issue is the double standard, right? The issue is what advantage or disadvantage does it give her in this moment. And I do think that, there is this thing that happens when black people ascend to certain levels, that they try these like very petty things to discredit
100%.
to
You seen the
discredit
fact that you seen the swimming caps they're banned.
Oh my goodness. Listen, so look,
It's
I was
ridiculous.
a competitive swimmer, right? And
Okay.
the official made the claim that that particular cap did not mimic the natural head shape Of course, it doesn't mimic the natural head shape when your hair is thin. When your hair is
When your hair's
thin
1A,
and
when your hair's 1A, what do you expect? Like,
exactly, and it lays down, right? Like that's, but no, I like that hair was a constant, constant issue for me, even to the point where I ended up cutting my hair off just because it was
wow.
easier to deal with. Because when I was growing up, none of those caps fit serious amounts of
Mm-hmm.
hair, let alone dreadlocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, who the fuck cares if it mimics the natural head shape? What is the natural head shape? That the natural head shape varies, and how much you need. And the point of a swim cap is to create a hydrodynamic glide,
Okay.
because things like your body hair create drag in the water. So what you need a swim cap for is to make sure that all of the water, as you're swimming through the water, glides over your head. If you have long, thick ass locks, it's not going to do that. And if you can't get them all in the swim cap, that's also going to slow you down. Because one thing that often happened to me when I did have longer hair, it's because the cap didn't fit well, it would pull back and it would actually create more drag. So, like, I mean, there are these very, like, again,
But
this is a very
when do we
material
draw the
thing.
line? Okay, that's a material thing. But then where do we draw the line? So let's say, for example, what's her name? Is it Nicola Jones being denied tenure, for example?
Oh, yeah.
Is that a rallying cry for Black people? I told you I'm being messy today. I'm bringing names. I'm bringing names. I'm bringing details.
This is okay. So, the thing about this is, right, even in the sort of Black scholarly community, there are questions about the nature, like some of her conclusions in her scholarship, right? But for me,
I mean, she's wild. She took money from Shell, but anyway.
yes. But for me, like, there's a whole bunch of people out there doing questionable ass scholarship, right? And
Okay.
so they try to, I don't know, like I think we talked about this even as it related to Trump the last time we talked. There's
Yeah.
always an element, there's always a what do you call it, a grain or a nugget
Mhm.
of truth, right? To
Mhm.
to these things that just get exaggerated and exacerbated. I am not one to come out publicly and say, "Oh, she doesn't deserve tenure." I think everybody deserves job security.
Okay.
So I will never, and I don't even just mean it as academics. I think everybody deserves job security.
No, absolutely.
And
But
so I
how do you
will
relate that?
never publicly come out against anybody's ability to have
Okay.
job
But then my
security.
question is, again, it's like, again, a reason why I think it's important, I'm just going to kind of be a bit pedantic on this point of the race
Uh-huh.
and class or race and material interest.
Mm-hmm.
Because then let's say like a Lori Lightfoot, she experiences racial abuse, for example.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
we get up and defend her? I mean, I say we, I ain't doing shit.
I know
But
what you, I know what you mean. Neither am I. I mean, this is the same. This is the same outrage. Like, so this is the most like what do you call extreme example, right?
yeah.
People getting upset about when Oprah was denied her when she couldn't buy
Yeah.
a horse or whatever. What I think why it's significant. Will I like make a public declaration and get all up in arms about it? No, but it's significant because it continues to show us that even as we so-called ascend, economic ladders, even as we perform all kinds of respectability, our
For real.
blackness still means that like some shit is just gonna be off limits to us, or some shit is still gonna be questioned, right? And I
It's very
see
interesting.
that matter.
It's like, no, I fully hear you, but it's like, I'll give you an example. When Noah, do you know who Noah Cyrus is?
I don't know. I don't.
It's I think she's a singer, I believe, some white girl,
Uh,
and she called Candace Owens a nappy hair hoe or something.
oh Lord.
See again, you see what I know. I'm giving extreme examples, but these are the challenges for many black. Because I'll give example, the people who are not, let's say, Marxists or who are not, the average. No, that's BS. There's no such thing as the average black person. But let's say someone who's just a bit, going through life, not really politically active. These are
Mhm.
questions they have. Because they say things like, "Oh, those who are black on the left don't back race enough." That's a charge that they give. And so I'm giving the extreme examples because again, sometimes it can become very blurred. It can become. I'll give just an example. Recently, I said this on the podcast with Dr. Joy James. When we've got right now, there's a union election in the UK, and the union is the largest union in the UK. It's 1.2 million members, and we have our Home Secretary who's like instituted some of the most racist immigration policies like in living memory.
Mhm.
She's a woman from South Asia.
Mhm.
She's a middle class woman, and
Mhm.
she's recently putting legislation that's going to penalize BLM protests, and she's like, she's really comfortable being the face of white supremacist policies.
Mhm.
This white man who's running for the union election, he's a socialist, a left wing guy. He's pretty cool. He says that, oh, I hope she gets deported. Yeah, essentially saying, I am hoping that she is subject to the same racist policies in which she institutes. But then the black people they were like, we agree with you, but you can't say that. And I'm like, even me, I was like, it didn't actually make me feel uncomfortable. I did not feel that type of way. I was like, okay, I agree.
In relationship to that, I mean, saying that you hope someone suffers the ramifications of the inhumane policies that they hope to implicate, I have no issue with that in a general sense. And it's the same thing, right? I was and continue to be publicly critical of Kamala Harris in the U.S. context, and all throughout the electoral process, I was constantly ridiculed, like, oh, we just
Did you
need
vote,
it.
by the way?
No, because I do not believe that it's necessary for me to lend legitimacy to a system that I find completely illegitimate to begin with. And that's why I don't vote in the presidential election. But, my issue with Kamala Harris, and I always said that I always attacked her on her policies. I didn't have to talk about, like, do I think she pandered to Black people and played up an identity that she didn't necessarily always hold? Absolutely. But that ain't my grounds of critique for her. My grounds for critique of her are her policies that were victimizing the parents of poor children and attempting to either fine or jail them for their children's truancy. My issues with her are her growth and expansion of the prison industrial complex under her tenure as Attorney General in California. So I can make real political critiques about her sans any discussion of her racial identity. So I don't have to do that. And so like that, I don't actually care.
But the question is, do we leap to her defense?
I don't. That's what I'm saying. I don't.
Okay.
I do not.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. But I feel like, but you do see some people do find it as like, where do we stand on these things? So I hear you.
Yeah, but the thing is, if your politics drives you, then you don't have no question about that, because we know that all skin folk ain't kin folk.
For real, facts.
And so we can have a larger structural critique of the way Blackness is relegated to certain positions without having to defend every reactionary Black person.
For real.
And that's
and that's your hot take. Now I'm here for it. You mentioned about 10 minutes ago the only Black people to exist, which is the African descendants of slavery.
You know I don't want to talk about these fools.
Who I've had the unfortunate experience to be in dialogue with over the last year, actually. Besides the fact, and by the way, this is ADOS, African Descendants of Slavery, for those who don't know. How do I sum them up? Their funders are questionable. They are
not pretty much there's a lot of alignment with fucking Israel in that book.
Yeah, exactly. They're xenophobic. They hate continental Africans. They are very pro-American, pro-America, and the premise of ADOS essentially is they're trying to get reparations. They're trying to get reparations for who? For those who are descendants of slavery only, because they feel like even when we speak about Blackness in the context of the United States, there's a specificity that is owed or that belongs to those who are descendants of slavery. And again, I don't know the in and outs in detail. I can only relate it to the UK experience, and absolutely, I've seen the differences between the Caribbeans and the continental Africans. Although I think, like, as much as the differences are, materially they're not that different.
They're not at all.
Materially, it's not that different. You might get like the new patterns of immigration, but again, that's a material analysis, because those who are newly come from Nigeria, for example, were already middle class in their country.
Exactly.
Their parents were already like, to even be able to get a visa to come to the West, you already had some connection in government, you knew someone working for the visa office, or you already studied it in the West in the 80s, and now you come back to bring your family. So all these things are, have a materiality to it. Question is now, you're African American though. You recognize there's specificity, and how much should we focus on the specificity when it comes to African American?
I am an African living in the America. I am not an African American.
Come on.
No, okay. So even because I don't think it's African. I think it's American descendants. Is it American? I can't. I don't know. So here's my problem with this, right? So they're even just in their own naming, they're thinking about themselves as the United States. How many? What is it? 13, 14, 15? It's like at least 16, 17 countries in the and that's not including the Caribbean, in the landmass that is North and South America, and people were enslaved all across this damn landmass.
Exactly.
So even just that alone in the naming is problematic, because their relationship to, let's say, Black Dominicans or Black Brazilians who come to the US is problematic in that way also. And so so even in the naming, it leaves out American descendants of slaves.
For real.
But also, like, in general, I do not put a lot of stock in this sort of Black exceptionalism, this sort of US exceptionalism. A lot of Black people in the US like to subscribe to, because I don't think it's useful, to be honest. I mean, we're already in this particular, in the context of the Americas. Actually, that's not even true. In the context of the US, we are an extreme minority.
Yep.
Extreme. But
Exactly.
in the context of the Americas, we are actually a majority. And in the context of the globe, we are a majority, right?
Yep.
And so I think it's not even politically expedient. It don't even make sense. Like, it just doesn't.
And I think it really does ignore how racialization plays out, because I think and I find that it becomes this kind of essentialist take on race in general, because let's be honest, the way I've been racialized as a Black person in the UK who was born in Gambia but came to UK very young is a completely different experience of Blackness as my literal cousin on the continent. And but then what you find is that these differences are not overplayed. For example, me and the Caribbean boy, both raised in the 90s or early 2000s in the UK, have almost like the exact same experience, if I'm honest. Like the job, I'll give an example. We just had a stat that come out from Bloomberg, which is like, assessing the finances of families in the UK, and the average that a Black family leaves to their descendants or leaves to their direct children, next of kin in the UK, is 0, by the way. And that's the same for African and Caribbean.
And that's the same in the US.
So same again when you have the same for the attainment gap or in university level, it's just by a few percentage, literally. However, there is a difference. I do in high school, for example, where Africans of like first generation seem to do it better than everyone else, to be fair. But again, I don't think it's to do with like Blackness here.
No, I think that's a class. I think that's a class thing, and like you pointed out, they're already coming with, in many instances, coming with an education above and beyond what they're expected. So yeah. So I mean, I don't. I don't like talking about these fools. But
it's a shame though, and I think ultimately, when you're trying to be a thought leader, it's not about being a reactionary, isn't it? You can see this shit that's out there, and you're like, I'm not gonna get involved.
Well, this is the thing, and I hate to keep coming back to Kamala Harris, right? The thing about, even so, the statistics that you mentioned, those statistics are relatively true even for people who are of so-called mixed racial ancestry, who have a white parent, because of this global logic that Blackness is a contaminant. It is a global logic. Even when we think about, so like when we talk about the sort of exceptional conditions of continental Africans who migrate to the colonial metropoles or to the US, that's a very small percentage of the population, right? But when we think about the material conditions of the vast majority of continental Africans, again, we are looking at very similar sort of life outcomes as the sort of, in the Americas, we're dealing with the sort of afterlives of slavery, and on the continent, we're dealing with the afterlives of colonialism, right?
Yep.
And so for me, it's always important to articulate that slavery and colonization are two sides of the same coin. It's never to say that they're exactly the same thing, but they have led to very similar material conditions. And I think, and this is the only place where I think the kind of US exceptionalism thesis holds up, is because the US has been so great at exploiting labor globally. The worst of material conditions in the US can be, slightly better than some of the material conditions in Latin America, in the Caribbean, on the continent, whatever. But that's really the only difference, because in terms of what as a society people have access to, the statistics are the same, right?
Yep.
So even like, when people make these ignorant ass comments like, well, I'm happy to have been born in the US at least, or at least I'm not, living in Africa. At least I'm not living so and so. And all that is a commentary on material conditions that people don't understand what has created those material conditions.
For real.
right? And
For
so
real.
this is a part of the conversation that you and I were having before about, even though we're not fighting over ideas, ideas
Yeah.
are important to the
Yes.
way we think and conceptualize our struggles, how we think and conceptualize one another, and how we envision what's possible, right?
And I think it's really important you mentioned that, because I found that honestly adopting, I only recently, by the way, adopted this kind of material approach to like understanding race, and it's honestly been such a like a weight lifted off my shoulder, in the sense that I find that a lot of the time people speak of race in such essentialist terms
Mm-hmm.
that you kind of like it doesn't, and then you become one of those people year in and year out of complaining of what this group did to you and what that group did to me. I'm like, okay, that's, I get that, and while the therapeutic is necessary, it doesn't give me any organizational value.
Mm-hmm.
Organizational value is like, okay, now we have the material condition, we have the stats, and we know what we can work towards. So I
Mm-hmm.
find it to be very, very helpful. Okay, let's move on a little bit now, talking about all things African.
Okay.
No, this they talk about, certain things that are un-African. They say, oh, homosexuality is un-African. Gender, the way the gender debates today is all un-African, which is funny enough. I don't know why I didn't think of this before, but I thought to myself, hang on a minute, people are all getting confused about using they, and I thought, hang on a minute, Wolof is not even a gendered language. Like
A
Wolof,
lot
you
of
know,
indigenous languages don't play the gender game that
we don't have
that
he or
romance
she. Well,
linguistically.
we have man, woman, boy,
Mm-hmm.
girl.
Mm-hmm.
But when we say like someone said something, it's always like neutral. It's
Mm-hmm.
always all the actions are neutral. I'm like, oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, crap.
Mm-hmm.
So England's catching them quite late. But yeah, what do you think of this point of these things are natural? And normally, what comes in that is women have their roles. Very patriarchal kind of understandings, and
Well, you already know that I do not believe, identify as a Pan African feminist, and I don't, and I very much believe that the things that women are so called limited to, even in terms of physical strength, I think is a
Mhm.
result of generations of being limited to those physical tasks.
Mm.
I don't know if we even know what physically women could be capable of if we had different expectations of women. And even the way that we understand strength, and like I was looking at the, how they do those experiments and they like make men feel period cramps, menstrual
I
cramps.
saw that and I thought, God forbid. What? Nah, you know what? Because I was like, but hang on a minute. Wait a minute, off topic. What the hell are you not feeling? Because how are you not,
Well, it's awful. It's
how are you
awful.
not just like surviving out here with that pain? Nah, sir.
But
No,
that's
thank
what I'm
you.
saying. Like that's what like okay, so this is the thing. It is both true and insulting when we are, going through moods or whatever to say, "Oh, are you on your period?" On the one hand, imagine, and I think the only other people that can identify with this outside of gender are people who live with chronic illnesses, right?
Mm,
Particularly people who live with chronic pain. You learn how to deal with it because you don't have a choice, right?
mm-hmm.
But think about how you would feel if you were like daily in pain, and how that like it makes you relate to people different. It makes you irritable. It makes you not feel well, and that the nature of capitalist life says that you just got to keep going on because most of I will guarantee you that most women would love the opportunity when they are going through that to not have any other responsibilities.
Mm.
And it's a difference if you choose to do something, but to not have to do anything.
Yeah.
Because, and it varies. Like our bodies are different. Sometimes they're worse than others, sometimes they're not, right? And so it's a lot of changes that you're constantly going through, right? And all that is said to say that the way we think about strength and physicality is very like externally centered. And we don't
True.
think about all of the different kinds of ways that we experience our bodies. And so, in terms of like things women do, things men do, I mean, at the moment, it may be different in the near future. Women give birth to children. But other than that, I mean, I don't really understand what you like, because I can understand at different points in time, right? When there is a reason why people created a sort of gender division of labor for
Yes.
expediency, right? But
Hmm.
that's not where we are in human history. Like,
Yes.
we can do so many things. If a man can take care of a baby from the time they come out of the womb at this point.
Hmm.
It's
True. True.
ideal for them to be able to breastfeed, but it's not
Yeah.
necessary, right?
True. I mean,
And
breast is best, but
it is best, but it's not necessary.
True.
And so, and I say that to say, like, this notion, these kind of essentialist notions about, and the only reason why it's best, right, is because a part of what happens with breastfeeding is that your immune system is transferred, right? And that what happens with formula is that babies are introduced to so much extra sugar and things early on in life that's not necessarily
Mm-hmm.
healthy for them, right? So, I mean, there are very particular reasons why that is the case. It's not, I think we have to always think about the sort of scientific realities of what these things are, right? And not reduce them to these essentialist gender notions in the same way that we're not trying to reduce certain things to essentialist racial notions.
But the charge of these things, like, okay, people have this thing of, oh, they're pushing this agenda.
Agenda.
People love an agenda, isn't it? Everything's a flipping agenda.
Yeah.
But and it's un-African, and but the specific claim, even though I forgot, I'm gonna kick myself now. There's an amazing scholar who was actually the wife of Hassan Sise, who wrote, like, basically she dispels a lot of these things about West Africans, pre-colonial Africa,
Just West Africa, all over the continent.
all over the continent. Yeah.
So let's just say, for the sake of argument, it was not. Let's say that homosexual and transgender people did not exist.
Mm-hmm.
They do now. And so now what? Are we really going to say that if we have a particular politics about what it is that we're trying to achieve, are we really going to be the same group of people that relegates an entire other group of people to the same status that we've been fighting against? So for me, honestly, even though it's untrue, it is very true that homosexuality and gender fluidity have existed time in perpetuity.
Exactly.
But even if it didn't, what's really at stake? And for me, that's the most important thing. What's really at stake is people being able to live whole, full, healthy, cared for, and flourishing lives. And there is nothing in my politics that says because you love someone or have sex with someone of the same gender, or because you identify as a gender that was different than what was assigned to you at birth, that you are somehow less deserving of that life.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that's the politics of it is fundamentally the most important thing. And so I don't even, for me, most of the time, I don't even care to have the conversation about whether homosexuality or gender fluidity existed. One, because I know that it did, but two, because that's not the most important thing in this moment.
But how about this thing which I disagree with? Because I feel like I always point to Huey Newton's speech on queer liberation, I think in 1970s. He gave this. But, people say, oh, it's an agenda. But how about this kind of claim? Look how far they've been able to make headways, and Black community are still lagging behind.
Yeah. But that's because, who was it? Was it Dave Chappelle that made a joke about Caitlyn Jenner that people found in poor taste? But essentially, his argument was that even though Caitlyn Jenner is a trans woman at this point, she continues to enjoy all the privileges of white men, right?
Yeah.
White men get to move and change and exist in certain ways that get validated, right? Mm-hmm. And so for me, that doesn't negate, or it doesn't, what is the word that I'm looking for? Even as certain communities within the sort of LGBTQ, certain, sub-communities within the LGBTQIA plus community have enjoyed certain rights, what does that look like for Black, queer, and trans people? Because what we know in the US is that Black, queer, and trans youth are the highest percentage of homeless youth.
Wow.
So even amongst that group, their Blackness is still trumping
yeah.
Their status as either homosexual or queer or however they identify. So even as those communities get some kind of sort of legal legislation, it still ain't trickling down to us, even as we exist inside of those communities. Mm-hmm. So then what?
No, you're right. For real. I feel like, I just think, people are, the more and more you realize, especially our Black, again, my hot take is that, there's no such thing really as a Black community. We like to talk to ourselves as this homogenous group when we're not, but that's for another day. Kind of finding.
But I do want to respond to that though. When I say community, it's not even about homogenizing, because to me, I take for granted the fact that we are heterogeneous as a community. And this is gonna go off on another tangent. I won't do it for too long, but it's one of the things that used to annoy me when people used to make comments about, oh, why are you going to an HBCU, a historically Black college university? Because the real world is not like that. I know what the fucking real world is. I live it every day. Every damn day. But what I also learned going to a black school is that I didn't just learn it there, but what I also saw is that we are heterogeneous. We exist in different class positions. We
Yeah.
exist along different racial, I mean, not racial. We exist along different religious
Yeah.
affiliations, different sexuality, gender affiliate, like all different kinds of. We speak different languages. We exist in all different kinds of ways, and
Mhm.
I think only people who don't imagine themselves as a part of a black community believe that that black community is homogenous. There's
Facts.
no way that I can believe that my understanding of what a black community is homogenous. It's too many different experiences and too many different live realities that I see on a daily basis.
Facts.
So
Facts.
I never saying that a community exists for me is never about homogenizing the community. What does link us is what we've been talking about, a particular history of exploitation and a continued experience with that to this day.
Mm. For real. For real. I mean, okay. I fully hear that. I'm not, that is the case. No one can argue against that. But I feel sometimes when we speak about, as this kind of, it's almost like this mythic black community, as if to say that we have some collective shared identity, which we obviously don't. We obviously don't, even though some people like to think of it like that. And I feel ultimately the reason why I find it a bit problematic is because you find those with particular class positions, those who are like, the petty bourgeoisie, they exploit that.
Yeah,
They exploit
that's
that
true.
as they exploit that homogenization. That we all know we're part of this same community. I mean, I don't know how you feel about this statement, but I was reading a book, Black Awakening in Capitalist America, and Robert
Mm,
Allen says that the civil rights movement was a middle class affair.
it was.
And I was like, shit, it was. Like when I thought about it, yeah, it was. And you find time and time again, you find that capital only yields when you challenge it, when you confront it. But then it has two ways. Either it's gonna like all out oppress people and repress people, which we've seen happen in America and around the world, or it just allows a few in.
Hmm.
But then those people are put up as, look, this is they came from your community, and then time and time again you find that kind of that those people from that particular class find it difficult to position themselves. Am I black? I'm a middle class white. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. So,
I mean, and this goes back to our early conversation. This is why representation matters, but it's not the only thing. Because if we stop at representation, then we're cool with what do you call it, Oprah Winfrey, a Barack Obama,
yeah.
Beyonce, or Jay Z, or whatever. But we know it's more than that because even as they are experiencing their own kinds of prejudicial treatment, they are themselves engaging in exploitative practices, right? They're exploiting the very communities to
Yep.
which they belong in order to generate that level of wealth. And that's why we can never limit ourselves to representation, because representation doesn't allow us to have a true politics, because all we care about is
But
seeing a face somewhere.
how much does it matter then?
It matters. I don't know
In,
how
in,
much.
in,
I mean, you want me
no,
to give
in
you
the
a
sense, no,
percentage?
no, 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 no. No, 10% representation, 50% politics. No, no, but insofar as, is it the fact that, okay, getting a black, we all agree black faces in high places doesn't do shit.
Mm-hmm.
So is it just a fact of having representation plus the politics then, as opposed to just saying one or the other?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, let's be
If it's
honest.
hard to choose, I would take the politics over the representation.
100%.
But I
Imagine if
think
you wouldn't take like a dope white or dope non-black leftist who's got dope politics over like a Kamala Harris. Of course I would.
absolutely. I mean, that was Sekou Toure's position about Fidel Castro at the Tricontinental. He
Oh, what did
said
he say? I'm reading something now about it.
he literally said, "Is what is the word? Is Fidel not more of our brother, more of an African than somebody like Leopold Senghor?"
Oh, oh,
That's what
T,
it was.
T.
If you go look at Sekou Toure's Tricontinental speech,
Okay, okay, I'm gonna do that.
yeah,
Oh, wow.
he literally said that, because he said that, like, because of Castro's commitment to African liberation struggles through providing, troops, resources, whatever, whatever, Sekou Toure and Kwame Nkrumah were very much opposed to the kind of cultural nationalism that Leopold Senghor, or the Negritude's movement.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, maybe because they were both in French West Africa, Sekou Toure he was like, fuck Senghor. in a way that's important, right? Like, and the thing is, a lot of people, they look at the sort of negritudes movement, the Black arts movement, as these really sort of important turn of events, but it matters that they ascend to the level that they do without the kind of politics that they need, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I very much so, like, the reason why I say representation matters is because I can't deny what it meant to grow up and go through school and have a Black woman teacher who said, yo, you can do these things even as these other little white women are challenging, are trying to stop you from doing those things. So it
Mm-hmm.
matters, but it's not everything, because there are plenty of people who get through those processes without any visible signs of
True.
representation, right? So it matters, but it is not by any means everything or
Of
most
course.
things. But I also think my issue with this notion that we have to choose things is we can walk and chew gum. Like
Yeah,
we
we,
can
we
hold
we need to stop
space for
operating from
diversity.
scarcity, isn't it? We have to stop operating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We can hold space for knowing that representation matters without saying that it's everything, and also be able to critique people who ascend to levels of power who might look like us but don't create policies that benefit the general masses of people. And I think we can and we should and we must hold both of those things.
Okay. Okay. And finally, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, this has been a really dope conversation. But all that means is I'm gonna get you on again in the future. But but finally, because clearly I'm not in. I don't seem to have yet managed to ascend into the same circles that you are in.
Oh, here we go.
But however, you recently came back from Venezuela
Mhm.
from the conference. Briefly, how was it?
It was a really interesting experience. So the conference that I came back, it was the Bicentennial Congress of the Peoples of the Americas. I mean, sorry, of the peoples of the world.
Okay.
And so what the occasion was, so like in 2019, the Venezuelan government hosted a series of like smaller meetings, conferences among sort of what do you call it, like what you might call interest groups, right? So they had a conference for women, a conference for Afro-descended people, a conference for indigenous people, for youth, for labor union workers, for people who worked in the media, for LGBTQ identified people, sexual and gender diversity, for educators. And the idea, I should say, in particular, to have conversations about those subsectors of the population's relationship to left politics, to socialism, right? So not just bringing them together in a sort of general rah-rah way, but to think about the role of these particular communities in building a global left movement. And this conference that happened this year was supposed to happen last year, but COVID, whatever. And so what they ended up having it this year on the occasion of the Battle of Carabobo. And the
Mm-hmm.
Battle of Carabobo was when Simon Bolivar essentially fought this battle for Latin American independence. The
Mm-hmm.
territory that was Gran Colombia, which is Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Venezuela, sorry, parts of northern Peru, Venezuela, Peru? Oh, Panama.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is, across the Americas is generally an occasion that many countries across Latin America celebrate, but that the goal was to both think within these sort of smaller subgroups and then think across these subgroups about what some of the goals are in terms of building a left socialist movement, and how do we do
Mm-hmm.
that from the perspective of Afro-descended people, from the perspective of indigenous people, from the perspective of women, from the perspective of youth. And for me, it's always, conferences are like interesting spaces because
Mm-hmm.
on the one hand, they can be a lot of pomp and circumstance.
Yeah.
And like resolutions and declarations, which I think are meaningful, but they're only meaningful insofar as, we work to materialize those resolutions and declarations. But I think in the sort of more material way, it's important to be in community with people who share similar values. And to know that even as I sit here in Quincy, Massachusetts, in this place that's very wide and very expensive and very gentrified and whatever, that there are other people in the world fighting for similar struggles. And so that to me is what I often find useful and rejuvenating about these kinds of moments, is being able to like be reminded that like there are many people in the world who care about and are
Mm-hmm.
working towards these same kinds of issues all over the world, and like literally from all over the world. So I mean, I think that there are many things to say about the conference, and like people, I think you'll see report backs and
Yeah, of
think
course.
pieces and things come out over the next couple of weeks about it. But I'm, happy to have been invited to participate in the Congress. I think in terms of the Afro descended, some of the sort of goals, like one of the things that they, are really thinking about is thinking about Pan-Africanism as a way of thinking politically about the role and the plight of people of African descent and our sort of importance and primacy in these global left struggles. And that is what,
Mm.
even though there is continued, Venezuela's a complicated place. Racism continues to exist. But insofar as the PSUV, the Socialist Party of Venezuela, the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, is trying to at least think with the communities of Afro descendants about the particularities of the struggles of people of African descent on the left. That's promising, and so I think we have to continue to stake our claim in that.
Thank you. Thank you. You see, this is why I had to bring back one of my faves, Dr. Layla. This was a dope conversation. This was a dope and insightful conversation. As always, it's literally me doing my intellectualism in public in front of everyone and bringing you on this journey. You are listening to Mamadou on the Malcolm Effect. Please like, comment, subscribe, be that on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. Until next time, peace out.